Hi, you're watching West Bloomfield 911. I'm your host, Tim Shepard, and on behalf of Chief Michael Patton and my Deputy Chief Kurt Lawson, as well as my brothers and sisters in blue, I would like to welcome you to the show. Joining me today is Officer Chris Kinaschuk of the West Bloomfield Police Department. Chris is also a certified A.L.I.C.E trainer, and we'll talk more about that later. So Chris, welcome to the show.
Tim, it is an absolute pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you very much. I know you're busy at the department, and taking the time to come over and talk to me about the police department and what you do specifically is great. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Great. So Chris, we'll start out with, obviously you're a police officer with the West Bloomfield Police Department.
Correct.
How long have you been a police officer?
7 years.
7 years. And I obviously know your background somewhat. I want the viewers to know you've been with our department for how long?
About 2 years.
Okay. And where did you come from?
I started my law enforcement career in Lafayette, Colorado.
Okay.
My family has a history of law enforcement. My father was a police officer for 40 years, chief of police in Brighton, then later became a lieutenant in the sheriff's department. My younger brother, he's a trooper.
Okay.
And originally, you know, my brother and I, we owned a gym in Colorado when we decided we still wanted to be police officers and kind of follow in Dad's footsteps. We then sold our gym, put ourselves through the academy. My brother decided he wanted a much larger department than necessarily was available in Colorado. Their troopers are only able to maintain highways, and he wanted more of an encompassing department.
Okay.
So he came back and began actually the academy a second time for MSP.
Oh, that's interesting.
I then got through my academy, went through my field training office, and I became a police officer in Lafayette, Colorado.
Okay.
I was out there for about 5 years.
Okay.
During that time, I spent 3 years on the Boulder County SWAT team. We were kind of a more multi-jurisdictional police force.
Okay.
Boulder County is massive, so they invited some of the smaller agencies to be part of the team, and I had one of those spots. And then a couple of years ago, my wife and I, we decided we needed a change, so we traded in mountains for lakes and moved back to Michigan, and then I got hired here at West Bloomfield.
That's a great story, and it's interesting because you're originally from Michigan, then you moved out there, then moved back?
Yeah, so I grew up in, I grew up until about 6th grade in Brighton,
Okay.
And then we moved to Chelsea. I went to Chelsea through high school, graduated from high school, went to Grand Valley, completed my 4 years there, and then being 22 and having kind of the world in front of you, I decided I wanted to go ski and hike and be in the mountains, so that's what I ended up doing.
Now, what helped in your decision to choose West Bloomfield as a department? Was there anything in particular that you liked about the department?
Well, so I'm kind of a unique situation. My family, we know so many officers, and when I was telling my folks and friends that, hey, I was coming back to Michigan, I'm looking for a good department, almost unanimously they said, you need to try to get into West Bloomfield.
Nice.
So I had some resources that maybe some other people wouldn't have had just because of, connections and family and everything else in law enforcement. Yeah. And fortunately enough, I was able to put in my application here and get hired.
That's great, and I'll tell you, obviously we work together fairly close, and we're definitely glad that you chose this department. You're an asset, and we're glad to have you, and look forward to what you bring to the department in the future. So let me ask you this, as far as your aspirations in this department, we have a lot of, we'll say, units that you can get involved with. Currently, what are you involved with in West Bloomfield Police Department?
Okay. I'm a firearms instructor for both pistol and rifle. I am an evidence technician, so I help process scenes and take photographs and kind of all that stuff that you see on CSI.
Okay.
And then I actually recently just became certified in A.L.I.C.E.
Okay.
Teaching hopefully around schools and hospitals and the businesses here to try to make the community a little safer.
And we're definitely going to talk about A.L.I.C.E, and we'll save that for a little later. In terms of your current assignments, how do you feel those assignments are beneficial to the community for you? So what I mean by that is, as a firearms instructor, you have to qualify. Give me some ideas of what is involved with some of the duties that you do at the department.
Okay. Well, firearms, obviously, being able to accurately fire and use what is essentially the life-saving tool of our profession, it's a diminishing skill. Sure. So new hires, we make sure that they are proficient It doesn't matter if you've been here for 6 months or you're all the way up to Chief Patton. Everybody has to pass our firearms qualifications with pistols and rifles to make sure that we're at a consistently high level. And just speaking from the experience and the other trainers like Lieutenant Mark Stout, we have an excellent, excellent program, and we have some resources that not many departments are lucky enough to have, including an indoor range where we can shoot as needed and kind of keep us out of the elements and dry. Some simulated caps machine where we're actually playing videos out on a paper screen, and we get to use our actual firearms to,
That's awesome.
you know, shoot or no shoot.
Sure.
So it's really rewarding because it's, you know, you can take somebody that might be struggling and then, you know, adjust a couple of things and they light up when they're doing well again.
You know, I think that's a valid point, and it's interesting because, you know, obviously I'm well versed in our department, so a lot of these questions I already know, but it's nice that you feel that way because a lot of officers, qualifying is a scary thing, right? Because your job depends on it.
It can be.
And not only does your job depend on it in terms of you want to qualify, but you want to be proficient in your tools, right?
Sure.
We don't actively use weapons or draw our weapons unless, of course, there's a perceived threat to ourselves or to others. So preparing is always a key. For you, I know that you have some experience with weapons. Can you tell me a little bit about what your experience is?
Sure. My father being a police officer, I've grown up around guns my whole life, hunting, target shooting. Realistically, it wasn't anything we took as strange or scary or anything like that. My father took all of the kind of illusion away from firearms. When I was younger, no matter how tired he was or he just got home from work, if my younger brother and I said, you know, Dad, we really want to see your gun, he would sit us down at the kitchen table, he would unload the weapon, show us that it was safe, and then he'd let us handle it. And as many people know, kids lose interest pretty quick.
Sure.
So instead of, you know, it being this mystery thing that, no, just don't touch it, you can never touch it, I knew what it was, I knew why I shouldn't touch it, but realistically, when that mystery wasn't there, I didn't have the desire to try to go look out and find it.
Yeah, that's great. And as far as I know that you work as an, I'm probably going to say this wrong, armory?
Correct.
What, am I saying that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so tell the audience what that means.
So currently I'm a Glock armorer, which means the primary pistol our department uses and is issued to other officers is our Glock pistols.
Okay.
Meaning that I'm able to not just strip it and take it apart, but take out all the little itty bitty springs and make sure there's not wear in wrong places and things like that. So kind of more of the, not just cleaning, it's almost more of the making sure that the little itty bitty nuts and bolts are working the correct way. There's a lot more to firearms when you break them down that far. There's a lot of little parts. And you better be sure you know where they're going back in. Otherwise, it's not going to fire.
Well, I think bringing that expertise to our department is excellent. And again, we're glad that you're bringing that knowledge and you're continuing that. As far as the evidence technician, what is that? Is there training for that? And how did you get interest in that? Excuse me.
So yes, you have to put in to be an evidence technician. There is a training process where you go to a school and you learn fingerprinting, forensics. It depends on how in depth or what you're trying to accomplish. There's so many avenues of evidence collection. One of the biggest ones we focus on are photographs, for example. We want to make sure that we can accurately document the scene for what it is when we get there so that we can show later on that this was there or that wasn't there. I kind of fell into it just because at my last department, we processed a lot of our own scenes in terms of photographs and kind of smaller scale items and things like that. We had detectives if we needed them or somebody to pull out and come collect a lot of stuff if we had like a major scene. But kind of the day-to-day stuff as we needed it, we kind of did on the fly. So when I came here and found out that it was kind of a, you know, elected job almost, I was pretty familiar with what the basic aspects were of it. And then they sent me to school to kind of refine my fingerprinting techniques and collections. And, you know, obviously the big stuff these days are with DNA and making sure you're not contaminating samples. So it really can be just about anything.
Oh, that's great. And, you know, I think that for evidence collection, and that's really a desire, right? There's not a lot. Some people get into law enforcement for different reasons. We know that, and to have that desire to go into the more forensic side shows an academic area that you're interested in. I think that carries over as well into like the being an armorer, right? So you're meticulous, and you have to know details, and you have to care about the small nuances. So that's all wonderful. In terms of working in West Bloomfield compared to your last job, and I don't need to hear it's way better here, anything like that. But the communities, obviously, every community is different. How do you feel? Do you feel this is a good choice for you coming back home and working for this department? And can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the previous city in the area I worked in are different in a lot of ways, demographics, socioeconomic, things of that nature. I really enjoyed here.
Okay.
I have told friends and previous coworkers the amount of support that the community gives to the police department is second to none.
Yeah.
Without them being as supportive as they are, it would make this job a lot harder. And certainly it was not the level of support I had in Colorado.
Okay.
But it's a fantastic place to work.
Great.
You can go from up in the north end to lakes and nature, and next thing you know, you're over on Orchard Lake, and it's stores and shopping.
Yeah. It's great.
So it's kind of an interesting mix almost.
Yeah.
But I've had zero regrets. I like
good.
being a police officer. It's an enjoyable career that it's always something interesting, that's for sure.
And how does your dad feel? I mean, he must be proud of his boys, or is he, being a police officer for so many years, how did he handle all that?
Well, it's funny, actually. My brother and I joke, because we both got into law enforcement late.
Okay.
And it was always my mom who wanted us to stay out of law enforcement. It was, you can be anything you want except a cop.
Okay.
So we joke, it just took 28 years to convince our mother to let us be cops. So finally, when that happened, Dad could not be happier.
That's
he was
great.
thrilled that we joke it's the family business.
Yeah,
I mean,
nice.
and we both do great in our respective agencies, so neither one of us has any regrets.
And I will verify and confirm that we think you're great, doing a great job at the department. And we're very glad you came here. But we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk with Chris about some more things, and we'll be back with more West Bloomfield 911.
The West Bloomfield Police Foundation raises money to help those who protect and serve the community. Whether it's emotional or financial support, the foundation provides a helping hand to officers, their families, and those in the community. For more information on the West Bloomfield Police Foundation, contact Kurt Lawson at 248-975-8900 or visit wbpolicefoundation.org.
Hello. I'm Lisa Brown, Oakland County Clerk, Register of Deeds. You know to check your credit report, but when's the last time you checked the title to your property? Most likely your home is your biggest financial investment, and deed fraud is on the rise across the whole country. Oakland County is no exception. That's why I worked with Xerox and Google to create our Property Records Notification System. Property Records Notification alerts property owners about potentially fraudulent activity, such as forged deeds and bogus liens. This free service, which is the first of its kind in the United States, makes it possible to receive up-to-date information about a property, making it much more difficult for fraudsters to go undetected. To sign up for our free notification system, please visit ocmideeds.com.
Welcome back to West Bloomfield 911. I'm your host, Tim Shepard. Again, I'm here with Chris Kinaschuk of the West Bloomfield Police Department. Chris is an officer with our department, and he's also a A.L.I.C.E instructor. So speaking of A.L.I.C.E, Chris, people aren't going to know what A.L.I.C.E is, and we're going to talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
I want to start out with talking about what's going on in the world today in terms of active assailants. I know that you're an A.L.I.C.E trainer, and you're going to describe what that entails and why you decided to do that. But what's going on in the world today do you think that we need this kind of training?
Well, unfortunately, there are people out there that commit these horrible acts. And we're at a point now where not at least thinking or having a bit of a plan in effect beforehand is a serious disadvantage to people working or schools. I know it's an unpleasant conversation to talk about,
Sure.
but realistically, if people do not have an idea of what they need to do in a stressful situation, they freeze or they go back to something they've already learned. And unfortunately, for many decades in the United States, when you were in school and something bad happened, you turned off the lights and you hid under your desk and you waited, and that was it. Unfortunately, after Columbine High School and the tragedy there, it proved that we needed to do something that was going to be different both in a law enforcement standpoint and as what we're teaching our kids and people in the businesses and more or less our communities.
Yeah, I agree. I think that not only is this training that we're going to talk about relating to the schools, which is a huge deal, obviously, with kids, but there's the businesses. I mean, we just had, in I think it was Aurora, Illinois,
Correct.
Another business that had a mass shooting. It happens all over the place, right? So, I mean, I think that what's going on today, there has to be, and like you stated, we have to have some kind of idea of what to do. Because sticking your head in the sand and hoping that things go away is just not going to work. So as far as A.L.I.C.E, that is a plan that's come about. It's a national organization and a national plan. Can you elaborate on what A.L.I.C.E is? Yeah,
A.L.I.C.E is kind of the opposite of what we've been teaching people so far. It is trying to empower people to be participants in their survival. And I know it's an uncomfortable reality, but mass shootings do happen, and they happen frequently. The mindset that it's not going to happen here and it's not going to happen to me isn't going to be effective or enough anymore if we truly want to protect citizens and children. And so A.L.I.C.E is a acronym for decisions that you can make, and we're not asking people to go out there and be, you know, heroes and run these bad guys down, but A.L.I.C.E has proven statistically that you can't just wait for police. You have to do something in those seconds or even minutes before police get there, because those are the most dire and vital time, because then it's just a potential shooter and victims.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I think the national average time police response, and this is like an average, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 5 to 8 minutes, maybe a little more?
Yeah, it's such a subjective number because, for example, our police department is practically next door to the high school. Whereas a county deputy coming from Oakland County to get there could be minutes, 10s, 20 minutes. But I would say probably 5 to 8 minutes. Also taking into consideration that most of these active incidents are over in about 5 minutes too.
I think that's where the problem comes in, right? Because if the assailant knows that they have limited time to inflict as much damage as possible, before they most of the time are cowards and take their own lives, or give up without a fight. I mean, I think that's the two choices they really have, right? There's usually not a fight with the police very often.
They usually don't try to have a fight with the police, so it's tough. We really have to change not only a mindset of, well, I don't want to expose my kids to this, but we also have to change a mindset of, it's not going to happen here because West Bloomfield's one of the safest cities in America.
Right, and you know, it's interesting you say that, because if you look at Parkland, right, the last shooting, which was it last year, where a large amount of people were killed, the things they said about Parkland are this: Parkland has one of the best school districts. Everybody wants to go to Parkland schools. Parkland is a great community to live in. Everybody wants to live in Parkland. Does that sound like anywhere to you?
Unfortunately, it sounds like a lot of places.
Right. And that's the problem I think we have. So specifics on A.L.I.C.E. What does the acronym stand for?
So A.L.I.C.E is kind of the decision tool for what you need to do. It's A for alert, L for lockdown, I for inform, C for counter, and E for evacuate.
Can you elaborate a little bit on each one of those, and just kind of, you don't have to go too much into it, but kind of what those mean in a little bit more of a narrow perspective?
Sure. So taking my previous example of kind of the old way of thinking of, you know, just turning off the lights and huddling in a room, waiting for help to come to you, A.L.I.C.E wants you to be a participant in this. So A is alert. We can't do anything if we don't know something's wrong.
Okay.
A lot of times people in active shooter situations say, oh, it sounded like fireworks, or oh, it sounded like chairs falling over, or doors being slammed.
Sure.
However, those are your alert indicators of, well, I normally don't hear fireworks at school, that's
Sure.
strange, or well, no, why would somebody be slamming a door in the middle of the day over and over? So alert is really what gets the A.L.I.C.E ball rolling.
Okay.
It's your time to say, hey, something's out of place, I need to pay attention to what that is.
Okay.
Going in after A is lockdown. Lockdown is where essentially you not just close the door and turn off the lights, but you actually physically barricade the door, whether
Okay.
you are using some sort of pre-installed system or if you are shoving desks and a heavy bookcase, or you're trying to make it as difficult as possible for a bad person to breach that door.
Okay.
So lockdown can be a lot of different things, and
Okay.
they discuss, like I said, either improvised, which isn't great because it kind of tells me that you haven't thought about the possibility before,
Okay.
and then there's stuff that's already kind of in place.
Sure.
Inform is then you need to get the word out, because until you call 911 to tell us something's wrong, the police can't get there to help you. We're driving, carrying on our normal day. Somebody has to inform the police what's going on. That gets emergency services and ambulance involved. Or it can be something as simple as somebody over an intercom saying, this is going on, so everybody knows what's going on, and they can make the appropriate decisions.
Okay.
A.L.I.C.E doesn't lock you down and say, if this happens, you have to do this. If this happens, you have to do that. It's giving you the three options of lockdown, counter, and evacuate for you to make up your mind of what is going to be the best.
Okay.
So moving forward, the C is for counter. That is, the shooter is right here in front of me, what do I do?
Okay.
And that is something like throwing an object at him, yelling, running, moving, not just being a stationary target.
Okay.
And then lastly, E is evacuate. If the active incident is happening on the other side of the school, evacuate. Get as far away from that school as you can. And A.L.I.C.E even says, if evacuation is an option, that is your best option, because the further you get away from the incident, the safer you're going to be.
Okay.
Evacuation, though, isn't just thinking I'm going to run out that door. A.L.I.C.E teaches you by any means necessary. If your life's on the line, that window isn't worth anything anymore. You need to get through it. So break the window, get out. And like I said, the beauty of A.L.I.C.E is it doesn't tell you, you have to do this or you have to do that. The alert phase allows you to assess and say, what is my best option now?
Sure. He's
way down the hallway, I'm going to evacuate. The active shooter may be in the hallway, we only have time to lock down.
Okay.
It really provides options and distracting, and it makes the shooter not in control anymore. And I think that's the main goal.
I agree. I think you're empowering people because knowledge is so important in these situations, right? If you have no idea that something's going to happen, you're stuck your head in the sand and you're just like, somebody else will take care of me. I think we know at this point that that's not really a reality, because we talked about response times. Some of these things are over before first responders can even get there.
That's correct.
So, we had Dr. Hill, who is the superintendent of West Bloomfield School District, on the episode, and I know that West Bloomfield School District is now training their staff in this procedure. Do you think that people in the community are grabbing hold of this, and what do you think? How can we get that out there more? Have you noticed any requests from the department about groups, businesses? Because it's not just schools, right?
No, it can be applied everywhere.
Okay.
So I think there is a demand, first of all, in West Bloomfield, because they are trying to get more A.L.I.C.E instructors to be able to teach this, because it is an effective program. It's great that teachers are learning this process. However, one teacher for 20 or 30 kids, that's 20 or 30 people that need to be able to also alert and be able to go through their own paces.
Okay.
And it's a sad reality that we have to teach our kids this, but this is the world they're being raised in, unfortunately. They need to be able to understand what they need to do.
Sure.
And I think kids are way more resilient than we give them credit for. If we tell them this is what we need to do if something bad happens, they don't have to think about it anymore. They just snap into what they've been taught.
Sure,
That's
that
the
makes
beauty
sense.
of it. So it decreases the decision-making time and the amount of time of inactivity.
Okay.
Lastly, I think the parents, as much as they don't want to have to think about active shooter dynamics or at a business, at a school, at a hospital, however, the survivability numbers dramatically increase by instituting A.L.I.C.E compared to an older huddle in one room and we're just going to lock down and that's our only option.
Okay.
And so it's, while teaching the teachers and the children that, we're also teaching the parents, because parents go to work at businesses and things like that. They're not
a good
immune
point.
from this.
Right.
However, if they know what their school's procedure is in A.L.I.C.E, it can help reduce a lot of that uncertainty and not knowing what's going on. Because God forbid something bad happens, they know, okay, my son or daughter was taught this, and we know as parents we have to go here to make sure we can get back with our kids. It really encompasses the community, not necessarily one group of teachers or students or parents or police. It's all of us working together to say, we're going to do anything we can to make sure this doesn't happen. And if it never happens, that's fantastic. But we also want to be prepared at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as far as the department, do you feel the department has been supportive with the policy of, I hate to say policy, do you feel the department has been supportive with A.L.I.C.E in general?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think anything that bridges or brings the police department closer to the community, we're always on for.
Okay.
I do not see a downside of ever working with our community because it's twofold. It makes the community more comfortable with us, and it takes away this illusion that, you know, we're not to be talked to or we're just out doing our thing. We're working hand in hand together with what this is.
Yep, I agree. And as far as staffing with this, so you say you're certified A.L.I.C.E trainer. What does that mean in general?
So, as a law enforcement officer, I can teach A.L.I.C.E anywhere in West Bloomfield. So basically where I am a police officer, businesses, hospitals, schools, nursing homes, whatever the facility may be, I'm able to teach in the West Bloomfield area.
That's great. You know, Chris, I want to thank you for taking the time today to come out and talk about yourself. I think the community is going to be impressed with you as one of the officers in the department. You know, a lot of times the community in general may not always come across officers in situations where, you know, if you're writing a ticket for someone, they may not be happy, right? So it's nice that you have an opportunity to meet one of our newest officers. And I say newest, there's a lot of officers now, and you've been an officer for a long time. So, you know, we're glad to have you here, and thank you for coming over and taking the time to talk about you, the things you do, and about A.L.I.C.E. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Tim. Anytime.
I want to thank you for joining us for this episode of West Bloomfield 911. You can keep up with the police department by liking us on Facebook, following us on Twitter and Instagram. You can also sign up for Nixle.com and CrimeMapping.com for the most up-to-date information from the police department. Thank you for watching. Take care. Goodbye.